We are two male dietitians on a mission to improve your condition. It is our ambition to promote the importance of nutrition. We love food, we love to cook. We're just two dudes, come take a look. We are Andy and Joel, two dietitians with a whole lot of soul.
Andy, how are you?
Good, mate. How about yourself? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Happy New Year to all our viewers. Welcome back to another episode of Dudes Talk Nutrition. Andy and I thought we would do a bit of a this versus that episode today. So we're actually going to be discussing oils, and I think two oils that often pop up are obviously olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, and coconut oil. So, Andy, what are your thoughts on the old extra virgin olive oil?
So, yeah, for me, extra virgin olive oil ends up being really the only thing I have around the house. So I'll use it for baking in the oven. So just to throw it out there right now, I mean, we talked about the smoke points earlier. The smoke points are, above 200 Celsius, above 400 Fahrenheit. So if you're baking, if you're frying at medium heat, roasting, whatever, olive oil is perfectly suitable for cooking. It's a great topping for salads, stuff like that. So for me, I love it. And one of the best parts about it is there's a strong body of research just showing the monounsaturated fats in it are just great for your heart, great for your cholesterol profile. So not that other oils can't do that, but I definitely am a big fan of olive oil.
It's funny. I mean, why do you talk about the smoking point being relatively high, and I think there's this misconception out there that if you heat olive oil to a certain point, it's going to go rancid. And I think a lot of people are fearful of either frying with it or roasting with it. But I think, as you've said, it's a perfectly good option. So not
Absolutely.
quite sure why why that belief is commonly held out there amongst some members of the community. But oh well. I mean, you talk about the health benefits of olive oil. I mean, we can't understate them. I mean, there's some anti-cancer benefits. There's obviously the fact that it can reduce triglycerides, reduce LDL, and both those things have obviously been shown to increase risk of heart disease. So, and obviously the anti-inflammatory properties too, and the antioxidant levels. And as far as I'm aware, you can't get an oil with such a high antioxidant content.
Right, and especially when you're talking about, replacing, maybe a butter or an animal fat or something like that with olive oil, because that's when you really see the powerful effects. So if you have someone who is having a high saturated fat diet and you switch over to, a higher monounsaturated fat, that's when you really see, not only do you cut out the saturated fat that you don't really need, but that's when you really see those LDL benefits. So using it as a replacement for that kind of stuff is a great option.
Definitely. It's actually in our guidelines, the Australian Dietary Guidelines, which actually says if you replace your saturated fats, so the butter, the lard, those types of things, and put in place a monounsaturated fat, obviously like things like avocados and nuts and seeds, but also your olive oils, that's where you see those benefits. So you're spot on.
That's a brilliant point, actually. That's a really good point. We have a suggestion in Canada to use 2 to 3 tablespoons of unsaturated oil, but that specific guidance I think is great because it's not just about using the oils, but rather using them in place of things which are less helpful, right? Because when you use both, then you get calories are adding up, things of that nature, and you might not get quite the same benefit. So that's a great point.
Yeah, and it's funny because obviously we're both really big into plant-based diets, and we know that the actual benefits of putting in some type of oil, obviously the monounsaturated oil with certain vegetables, actually increases the bioavailability of some of those nutrients found within the vegetables. So I know we've talked about lycopene before, and that's obviously enhanced with some type of oil. So definitely olive oil. I mean, I fry my eggs in olive oil. I dress my salads with olive oil. I roast my veggies. There's not much I can't do.
Yeah, it's really true. And I think it does, with these emerging trendy products, I think it does get a bit of it knocks the reputation a little bit. But I guess we are able to talk about one of these trendy products, which is coconut oil. So why don't you give us some initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I struggle a little bit with coconut oil. I hear about it all the time. I hear that it's great for weight loss. It's great for cholesterol. I always make the joke that it can do everything except clean your car. But I don't really get it. When I look at coconut oil, I think it's really high saturated fat, and I know there's this debate about that we've got to break it down into certain types of saturated fat, and there's a particular fat called lauric acid. And I guess the evidence at this stage is that we don't know a lot about it, but we do know there's certainly some evidence that yes, it can actually increase your HDL cholesterol, which is a positive. But at the same time, it can actually increase your LDL, which is obviously a negative, and thereby increasing your risk of heart disease. But I think we just talked about the anti-inflammatory properties of olive oil. We've talked about the antioxidants found within olive oil, and there's, as far as I'm aware, there are very few, if any, antioxidants found in coconut oil.
Right, and I think coconut oil gets a lot of the rep from I think it was on Dr. Oz, things of that nature. But the thing about it, regarding saturated fat is, the saturated fat in coconut oil probably is better than what's in butter and, what's in higher fat, dairy or oil products. So that's a reasonable point. If you're saying you want to use coconut oil in place of that and you're okay with the expense, fair enough. Fair enough. But, it's just, I don't think, and I also think as well, that olive oil benefits from a great body of research and a prolonged period of consumption. So we have a lot of the evidence on that. But I think, as we were talking about earlier, I think coconut oil, for the price it's at, for the questionable, effect of the saturated fats and things of that nature, I think there's a use for it when it comes to cooking. And why don't you tell people when it does actually have a useful role?
Yeah, so it's funny. I think it actually works quite well in curries and Asian style dishes. But I wouldn't go cooking your eggs in it, and I certainly wouldn't go cooking your mushrooms in it. I was just telling Andy offline that I went to a cooking course in the middle of last year, and the chef decided to cook his mushrooms using coconut oil, and they really weren't nice at all. And I think you can't get better than using a good quality olive oil if you're going to saute mushrooms. So, look, it has its rightful place, but I certainly wouldn't go replacing it or using it instead of olive oil or certainly some of those other plant-based oils.
Right, and just to be clear, these extravagant benefits that you've heard of it on these shows, I mean, there's just no evidence to support that. So is coconut oil some terrible thing? No. Is it the messiah? No. Probably somewhere in between. And like Joel said, if a recipe calls for it, go ahead. But I wouldn't just go throwing out your olive oil just yet, and that's probably the take home. And not to mention the fact, when we're talking about helping people increase their vegetable intake and stuff like that, and how much calories, salad dressings and stuff can contribute to to your overall intake, olive oil is a great replacement for, these high-calorie salad dressings. That's something that coconut oil can't really do, just as an example,
Yeah, absolutely. So as we said, take-home message is olive oil where you can, but if a recipe calls for it, or if you'd like to use coconut oil because it's a distinct flavor, then go for it.
Right. Sounds good. I think we got the hammered home that point, mate.
I think we did, and I'm trying to think of an oily pun or a fatty pun, but I just can't think of any, so I don't know if you've got one to finish up on.
For once, I'm at a loss for words. We'll have to get back to the people on that.
Well, yeah. Hopefully we can produce the goods next time. Anyway, it's been great chatting to you. Obviously, we really encourage you all to get in touch with us. Flick us an email, nutritiondudes@gmail.com. Get around us on Facebook, YouTube, and obviously our individual Instagram accounts. We'd love to hear from you. And once again, we've hopefully have provided you with some valuable content. And give us a thumbs up.
Yeah. All right. Cheers. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later, mate.
See you, Andy.